Hi, my name's Elaine. I'm a nurse here in the state of Kansas, and today I would like to talk about the tragedy of Chernobyl. Not a lot of people really know about this. A lot of people are fascinated by this. I think it's an interesting topic because they had a really good mini series on HBO, and on top of that, I like when I can see history mirroring itself because it just proves, certain facts in history. Before we get into this, yes, we are talking about a nuclear power plant. Yes, we are talking about the dangers of that situation and that tragedy. However, I want to point out nuclear power is safe. When all the people take all the precautions and people follow the rules and people aren't trying to, do a power play to get a promotion and doing dangerous things, nuclear power is safe. Now, you know me. I have all my information here. So I have facts for you. According to earth.org, the biggest setback to nuclear power is the expense to construct the power plant. However, that is offset by the energy produced by the power plant. It is highly efficient. U.S. Energy Information Administration says that there is no direct carbon dioxide emission from a nuclear power plant. That smoke you see, that's not CO2. That is steam from water. Our World in Data says nuclear power is safer than coal, oil, biomass, hydropower, and wind. And it creates less greenhouse gases than solar. So pretty much every other power there is, it's better. Because it's also better than natural gas. But you got to take the proper precautions. So, what happened in Chernobyl? Okay, there had to be a safety test run. It should have been done before it opened, but, red tape and all that. Soviet Union, they like to, legalize things and then do the paperwork afterwards, I guess. I don't know. So they had to do this test. And to do that, they needed to decrease the power for a certain period of time beforehand. Well, the area surrounding the Chernobyl plant is in Ukraine, which at the time was part of Soviet Union. We're not doing that story today. Anybody who wants to hear about that? Not happening. So, at the time, the surrounding areas who were dependent on the plant said, hey, we can't afford to not have enough energy right now. So, you can't do this. So they decided, Antonio Dyatlov, hopefully I'm saying that right, decided with his boss, because he really wanted a promotion, that they were going to do this at night. With people at night who had never run this test, who weren't even informed before they got to work that they needed to do the test. They've never run this. They have a piece of paper. They have a list of things. Half the things are crossed off. They're like, what are we doing? He's like, we're doing it. Just follow my orders. And in this mini-series, he was very abusive of his power. If you don't follow me, I will make sure the KGB gets you, basically. It was really bad. Now, one of the problems with this situation was some vital information was censored by the KGB and the Soviet Union that was pertinent to the safety feature and this test. So let's talk about how the power plant works. So you have a nuclear core. It's surrounded by rods. On the end of the rods is supposed to be something that connects it and is supposed to also help the plant to be stable. At the time, the rods were capped with graphite. And at the time, the information about the graphite was censored. When you add the graphite to the uranium, so you have uranium, right? Radioactive. You need to have the little electrons hit each other. So you have to have these rods slow it down just enough that they hit each other, because they're not really going to hit each other in a natural situation. The problem is you have the rods slowing them down, and then you have the graphite that's kind of intensifying it. So it's like, woo, okay? And that's where you get an explosion. This is all explained very well in the video. So, in the mini-series, I mean. The information about the graphite intensifying it was censored. The information that pulling the rods out and shoving them back in would cause a nuclear explosion was censored. Because the government funded this, and guess what they decided to use because it was cheaper? The graphite. They knew that it was dangerous. They knew it could cause a problem. They didn't tell anybody else. They didn't care. They saved a few bucks, right? Like I said, the biggest drawback to a nuclear power plant is that it is expensive. So, on April 25th, 1986, during this nuclear test, they pulled all the rods out because the energy was not dropping fast enough. So they couldn't practice the safety test. They needed to make it work. When they started the safety test, the energy rapidly increased. So they had an AZ5 button, which is basically your stop button. End all programs, right? That put every single one that had been removed, all the rods with the graphite tips, back into the vicinity of that core. And it caused an explosion. On record, they have 2 people died. On record, they have 28 people who died as a direct result of complications from this. This is according to the World Nuclear Association. They're saying that only 38 people died. They go on to say there is no evidence of major public health impact attributed to radiation exposure 20 years after the incident, according to the United Nations Scientific Committee. They had in that building a Roentgen detector, which detected how much radiation was in the air that was set point at 3.6 Roentgens. That's about 400 x-rays. But they were telling people, oh no, it's about an x-ray. Nothing dangerous here. They went and got another machine that tested it. That was a little bit higher at 200 Roentgens. It maxed out there. They finally had Boris Shcherbina with Valery Lagasso. Hopefully I'm saying those right. Valery Lagasso was a nuclear physicist. He was their expert that they brought in. He identified the graphite. He knew about this paper. He told Shcherbina what was going on. When they got to ground zero, they asked a military official, a Soviet Union military official, for a volunteer to go and measure how much radiation was coming from that area, because they were telling people it was 3.6. Even after they knew it was 200. That military official volunteered to do it himself because he wasn't going to put one of his people in that situation. They covered it with lead, they put him in a suit, and he drove there. It was 15,000 Roentgens. At this time, nobody was evacuated. Nobody was evacuated. People in other areas because, the KGB and the Soviet Union were trying to keep this hush-hush, were having their radiation detectors go off in other countries, Switzerland and Germany. And then America got a satellite picture of it, and they saw it. They saw the explosion on the satellite picture with their radiation. The Soviet Union and the KGB were still letting children walk to school, even after Germany had said that they weren't letting anybody outside. And according to them, only 5,000 cases of thyroid cancer were detected. And there's no long-term effects 20 years later. They're not taking credit for those. They're not taking credit for any of the numbers of deaths of people who died. They're saying, oh no, no, it's fine. Nothing happened. They had to bring in Lagasse to try and fix this. Other scientists had to come in because they found another problem. They were dumping sand and boron to counteract this, except for the tanks from when the fire department came to try and put out the fire. All those firefighters died, by the way. When they tried to use the water to put it out, they filled the tanks, the fuel tanks up, or the water tanks up. So once that boron hit that water, there would have been another catastrophe. They had to send people in there to go and drain those tanks before the boron hit it. When I went and researched it, those 3 men who volunteered for that, they're still alive, luckily. A lot of people died. It wasn't until 36 hours later that the people in the area, 36 hours! It wasn't until 36 hours later that the people in the area were finally evacuated. Lagasse had to go and have testimony about what happened in Venice. And when he did, he told them that it wasn't a problem with the nuclear power plants because he wanted to save face for his country. When he came back and they had to have a hearing with the KGB and the Russian government and the Soviet Union and Ukraine and everybody else, he told them exactly what he knew. He called them out. He told them it needed to be fixed. After this tragedy, nothing happened to fix it. You want to know what happened to Lagasse? He committed suicide 2 years later. On the exact day, the exact time. And guess what? Somebody finally did it. They fixed the power plants. Let's talk about some of the irradiation that was out there. Sorry. You have radioactive iodine. Radioactive iodine causes throat or thyroid cancer. Fun, right? But no long-term effects. Strontium. Strontium-90, which has an extremely high half-life, by the way. It's still there. You probably won't see the end of that for another 300-400 years. Strontium is linked to leukemia. That's cancer in your blood. Then you have cesium-137, which is the longest one out of all of them. Probably 600 years or so before that one's completely gone. Cesium-137 affects the whole body, but affects your liver and your spleen the most. Do you know what your spleen does? Your spleen affects your whole immune system. But no, there's no long-term effects 20 years later. It's estimated that thousands of people died. They still have to kill animals in the area. They can't plant anything in that area. It's not safe for humans. When they were trying to throw some of the granite back into the nuclear core, they could only let people be up there for 90 seconds. 90 seconds! Or their lives would be cut short. Some of those firefighters who were there on that night trying to put out that explosion, they only got a couple weeks. Some of the scientists who were helping to try and combat that after Dyatlov ran away, died after a few days. One of them was only 25. And this could have been avoided. Had the KGB and the Soviet Union and that government over there not censored valuable information because they didn't want to look bad. Thousands of people died because the government had too much power. And we in America are letting the same thing happen. Do you want to be part of those numbers as well?